Hey there, how's it going? Welcome to Dominions 5. My name's Mew. In this video I'm just going to quickly go over some shortcuts and hotkeys and things that people have asked me about in the past. With that in mind, I'm going to start on the army screen because people have asked me about this one a lot, so let's get straight into it. On the army screen, when you're positioning your armies, you can right-click to select a squad and then move it around by using the left click. You can also right-click to select a squad and then move it around with the arrow keys. You can even select commanders this way and then move them around in the same way. Something that's occasionally useful is that if you select a commander and then hit C, it'll place him inside the first squad that he's leading. Or, alternatively, you can select a squad and then hit C, and it'll place that squad on top of the commander that's leading it. This is sometimes useful and sometimes not very useful, but it's there if you need it. You can also just press question mark on this screen in order to see these and other shortcuts. And when I say question mark, I literally mean hold down shift and press /. When it comes to actually scripting mages, there's shortcuts for pretty much all of these commands, so you can do things like S for stay behind troops, or you can do A for attack, and then you can hold down Shift and V to do attack cavalry, or Shift and F to do attack flyers. You can do C for cast spells, or D for advancing cast spells, or you can hit N if you don't want to do any of these things and you want to clear it. These are useful because they also work when you're scripting units as well, so for instance if I hover over this and press H, it does hold an attack for this squad, and then I can do uppercase A for attack archers. We can hover over a ranged unit and press F for fire, or we can use J for hold and fire. The really useful command on this screen though is X. If you say hold a turn, and you press X, it just repeats whatever the last thing you did was. So for instance, if we want to just have this person cast Cheap Fate a bunch of times, we can script it once, and then just press X a bunch of times. And then we can do C for good measure. And then that's done. You can also just press question mark on this screen in order to see these and other shortcuts. Once you do have some kind of script that you like, you can hover over it and press Ctrl and a number in order to save it, and then just press the number in order to paste it. So for instance, for this Cheap Fate script, I can hover over it, hold down Ctrl and press 1, and then go down to Indigo here and press 1, and they automatically have the same script. If you're wondering what scripts you have saved, just press Ctrl and S, and that will show you all of the scripts that you've saved so far. If you want finer control over the units that you're picking up and placing down, you have a bunch of tools to do that. For instance, I can select this first unit and then hold down shift and then select this unit, and it selects the entire range between those two units. I can press enter to cancel a selection. I can individually select units by left clicking them one at a time and then paste them under this guy's leadership. I can hover over this squad and press A in order to select the entire thing and then put it back. I can double click a unit to select every unit of that type and then give them to this guy. I can even do things like hold down tab in order to see which units have injuries of different kinds or curses. I can hover over a squad and press W in order to select all of the wounded units, or I can hit enter to cancel, then hover over the squad and press L in order to specifically select the unit who has a limp, which is this guy. That can be useful because if you tell a limping unit to march, he might end up crippled. And if you want to select all of the crippled units, you'd press C, although none of these guys are crippled, so I can't really show that one off very well. A selects an entire squad and P puts it straight into the garrison, which can be pretty useful for just very quickly moving everything to the garrison. That's particularly useful if you have a bunch of commanders that free spawn units and when you want to quickly move them all to the garrison. And if we hit Z on the screen, or Z if you're an American, it'll hide everybody that's researching. As you can see here, research is hidden 9. Pretty useful. You can also just press question mark on this screen in order to see these and other shortcuts. On the strategic map, there's a variety of ways we can select multiple commanders. For instance, we can select Jenny Fliptinkler here and then hold down shift and select potato, and that selects the range of commanders between those 2 points. I can then hold down Ctrl in order to deselect or indeed select individual commanders, which can be pretty useful. If I want to be really fancy, I can do things like select all commanders of the same type. So for instance, both Jenny Fliptinkler and Yo-Ho-Ho are first clowns. So if I hold down Alt and select Yo-Ho-Ho, it also selects Jenny Fliptinkler, because they're the same unit. If I want to be really fancy, I can just select commanders who have exactly the same paths. For instance, Potato here is an impossible clown, and so is Grogosaurus, so they just have H1. But Pumpkin is also an H1 because he's a big hat. So if I hold down Shift and Alt and select Pumpkin, it also selects Grogosaurus and Potato, because these guys all have the same paths. If you're having trouble seeing what all your mages are at a glance, you can use the triangle brackets to zoom it in and out. If you have so many commanders that the list extends off the screen, you could also use plus and minus to scroll it, but in this case we don't have enough commanders to do that, so you just have to take my word for it. Either way, once you finish selecting the commanders that you're interested in, you can hold down Ctrl and press T, and it will only show you the scripts for those 3 commanders that you've selected. This is particularly useful later on if you want to script small groups of commanders one at a time on the basis of the paths that they have. If we then send these 3 commanders into fillet fields, we can select fillet fields and hit Y, and it will only show you the units that are moving to that province. This is really useful if you have commanders coming from another province. For instance, Iggy here might want to join them. Then we select fillet fields and we see those 3 commanders plus Iggy when we press Y. Pretty useful. Another thing I can do after issuing a move order is I can tell them to go to fill up fields, and then I can hold down Alt and click on the wilt here. And that will give me a planned order that will get carried out over the next few turns. This is useful because holding down Alt works even if you have multi-turn movement disabled, like I do. If you have a sneaky commander like this mime here who has 55 points of stealth, usually when you issue move commands they'll be stealthy by default, but if you hold down control it will be a move command instead of a sneak command. That's pretty useful too. How about raiding? Ever use the raid command? Commanders who come with the pillager ability are very good at pillaging, like this barbarian here. And pretty much every commander can pillage. If I select slapstick here and press space, I get the list of all the commands that he can carry out, including pillage. But because Winged Uruk here has the pillager ability, I can also hold down shift and issue the raid command. Ever seen that symbol? Most people haven't. Usually the only way you can see it is if you move into a province and then, bring it up here and you can see, oh yeah, raid. But just hold down shift and you can do that whenever you want. That's kind of cool, right? Speaking of things that you can only do when you've already issued a move command, if you move onto a fort, for instance Yo-Ho-Ho here could move over to, I don't know, Black Angel, then at the conclusion of that move order he's going to end up inside the fort. However, I can hit space and then go to move and patrol. And that gives him a move patrol command instead. That means that next turn he'll be outside the fortress instead of inside it because he'll be patrolling. Although, I should point out, this doesn't actually count as patrolling. It literally just puts him outside the fort during battles, it doesn't actually carry out a patrol order during this turn. Is there anything else fancy we can do? You bet there is. How about this one? Let's say we select Iggy here, and then we press Ctrl and O. Ever seen this command? Move commander to province number. We can put in province number 68 and press OK, and nothing happens. You know why? Because I've got multi-turn movement disabled. But let's turn it back on. Select Iggy again, press Ctrl O, type in 68, and look at that! Some kind of planned move order all the way over to province 68. In case you're wondering where province 68 is, you could also just press G and then type in 68 and it'll go straight there. Yeah, of course it's by the avocado, why wouldn't it be? Other cool things we can do on the strategic map include pressing Ctrl and M. This puts little numbers on all the provinces that shows you how much map movement it takes to get there from where you are right now. So for instance with Fillet Fields selected, we know it takes 16 points of map movement to get to Flanklands. If I select Mince Meadows, you can see it now takes 22 points of map movement to get to Flanklands. This can be useful if you want to know exactly how much map movement you're going to need to attack somebody. For instance, if I select Kirkostaculus, my capital, I can see that it would take 24 points of map movement to get to Green Monster. None of our commanders have 24 points of map movement, except Spud, who's wearing quickness shoes. I guess that means he can get there in one move. But Blinky, who only has 16 points of map movement, can't. Speaking of quickness shoes, by the way, if you ever want to get rid of items on a commander, just hover over it and press L. Much quicker than individually moving items into the Treasury. By the way, when you're in the Magic Item Treasury, you can hold down Shift in order to just move items around. Back on the strategic map, you can also help out with blood hunting by using the V and Z commands, or Z if you're an American. In this province we have 2 blood hunters and 1 scout waiting to pick up all the blood slaves. Just select the scout and press Shift and V. Just like that, he's got 30 blood slaves. Unfortunately he can't carry them all because Bonga the Great has been pretty busy. But we can move him over to a lab then, and once he's in a province with a lab, such as Siege Helm here, you can just select Siege Helm and press Shift and Z. And then they automatically go into the lab. That'll save you a little bit of time when you're managing your blood economy. You can also just press question mark on this screen in order to see these and other shortcuts. If you're ever wondering which spells might be good for your air mages to cast, you can open up a spellbook by right-clicking it and then press A to only see air spells. You can also press F to see fire spells, S to see astral spells, D to see death spells, and so on. You can even do R for rituals, C for combat spells, G for globals. You can also just press question mark on this screen in order to see these and other shortcuts. If you ever have a mage doing alchemy, like Doozy here, and you realise, oh no, I've accidentally made a mistake. I've turned all of my useful gems into useless pearls. Fear not, you can hit X, and it just undoes it. But whatever you do, don't leave this screen before you undo. You'll be sorry. You can also just press question mark on this screen in order to see these and other shortcuts. Speaking of undoing, if you have a bunch of commanders queued up and then you accidentally get rid of them, or you get rid of everything by, I don't know, pressing delete, fear not, you can do the same thing here and press X, and it resets everything to the way it was at the beginning of the turn. That's quite nice. You can also just press question mark on this screen in order to see these and other shortcuts. Lastly, there's a lot of people on my videos who ask me the question of, hey Mew, how is it that the text in your game is so much better and more readable than the text in my game? Well, there's a very simple answer to that. It's because you can make Dominions use whatever font you want. If you go to the directory where Dominions is installed, which is probably Steam, Steam Apps Common Dominions 5, and then go into the data folder, you can scroll down until you find 3 font files. They're called GUI Font, GUI Font Fancy, and GUI Font Texty. Put any true type font file you want in this directory, name it GUI Font, and Dominions will use it. Name it GUI Font Fancy, and Dominions will use it. I've got the original font files backed up here at the top of the directory. As far as I'm concerned, these fonts stink. You should get rid of them as quickly as possible. I'll put a link to the fonts that I use in the description on this video if you're really interested. I think that's it from me though. There are probably some more shortcuts and hotkeys and things that people can think of that I didn't cover in this video, but I think that covers some of the most important ones that I've been asked about over the last few years. Are there any hotkeys that I didn't cover that you think are important? Let me know in the comments below. That'd be great, due to engagement with the YouTube algorithm. Speaking of which, remember to like the video, and goodbye.